Good evening and welcome to the City of Topeka Planning Commission meeting. We are a commission appointed by the mayor and city council to plan for the orderly growth and development of the community, to hold public hearings, to make recommendations to the governing body on planning items. Please note that the governing body rules state that public hearings for planning cases shall be conducted solely by the Planning Commission. No additional public hearings will be conducted by the governing body. Tonight's cases are tentatively scheduled to be heard by the governing body next month. Agendas can be found at topeka.org. Some of tonight's cases involve public hearings. For those cases, the procedure will be as follows. First, the planning department staff will summarize the case. Next, we will hear from the applicant or a representative of the applicant. Then we will receive public testimony. Comments are limited to 4 minutes. For agenda items that do not involve public hearings, public comment is allowed provided that the person has signed up on Topeka Speaks or has notified staff prior to 5 p.m. today. Comments are limited to 4 minutes. Finally, at the end of regular business, the commission will entertain general public comment regarding matters related to commission business, provided that the person has signed up on Topeka Speaks or has notified city staff prior to 5 p.m. today. Again, comments are limited to 4 minutes. Amanda, will you please take the roll?
Ms. Nelson?
Here.
Ms. Pearson?
Here.
Mr. Brooks?
Here.
Ms. Herron?
Here.
Mr. Nager?
Here.
Mr. Mock?
Here.
Ms. Hannon? Here. We have enough for a quorum.
Next is approval of the minutes of the November meeting. Any motion on that?
I make a motion to approve the minutes.
I second.
Any discussion on the motion to approve November's meeting minutes? Seeing none?
Ms. Hannon?
Aye.
Mr. Mock?
Aye.
Mr. Nager?
Aye.
Ms. Herron?
Aye.
Mr. Brooks?
Aye.
Mr. Pearson? Ms. Pearson?
Aye.
Ms. Nelson?
Aye.
Minutes pass.
Next is declaration of conflict of interest or ex parte communications by members of the commission. Seeing none, we'll move on to our action items. We have one action item that's PUD 2513. I will pass it over to staff for their presentation on that.
Thank you. This request by Coast to Coast Construction is rezoning from C2 Commercial District to a PUD Plan Unit Development District for limited C2 commercial uses plus 1 to 2 residential dwelling units. The PUD master plan is waived, and that is because the requirements can be placed on an ordinance that will go to the governing body. The site's located at 2012 Southwest 10th Avenue and comprises 0.15 acres of land. The applicant requested the zoning change to give him flexibility to reuse the commercial building for both residential and limited C2 commercial district uses. The PUD is necessary to restrict permitted land uses to those that are compatible with the surrounding neighborhood and allow the owner more flexibility of use of his property. Under surrounding zoning and land uses, to the north of the site is single-family dwelling district zoning, comprised primarily of single-family dwellings. To the east of the site is a C4 commercial zone property, and it's comprised of a medical office. To the south is C2 commercial district, comprised of a veterinarian office and credit union. And to the west is C2 commercial district, comprised of single-family dwellings. The applicant did hold a neighborhood information meeting on December 3rd. 4 people, including the owners and realtor, attended the meeting. There were no concerns expressed regarding opposition. Planning staff reviewed the zoning application relative to the required findings in the code, a couple of key criteria, character of the neighborhood. Although the Southwest 10th is predominantly zoned for commercial uses. In reality, it's comprised of a mix of office, residential, as well as neighborhood commercial. That being said, the rezoning does not alter the character of the neighborhood, and it allows a use that's consistent with the pattern of surrounding land uses. Suitability of uses to which the property has been restricted. The site's really not conducive to many uses in the C2 zoning because of its small size and location in the interior of the block, making it difficult to redevelop for commercial uses requiring parking, circulation, and access. The subject proposal is in conformance to the comprehensive plan. The historic Old Town Neighborhood Plan designates this for an office use that encourages the expansion, that does not encourage the expansion of commercial uses in the block. It's also in an area designated as a strip commercial overlay in the Land Use and Growth Management Plan, intended to prohibit the expansion of existing areas already zoned for commercial uses. For that reason, staff has placed a condition on the PUD that will prohibit certain C2 uses such as automobile and vehicle car washes, automobile service stations type 1, 2, and 3, or 3, drive-through establishments, and automobile rental establishments. Staff is recommending approval with the 5 conditions in the staff report, and I'm open for any questions that you may have. Thank you.
Any questions for staff? I had a couple. You said something was waived. Can you explain more about that?
Oh, typically, when you see a PUD, there's a master plan associated with the case. This was waived because we can do PUDs if conditions of the PUD can be placed in the ordinance. And the conditions of this PUD can be placed in the ordinance on the that goes with the zoning change.
All right. And then, am I correct in thinking, this is kind of jumping ahead, but very briefly, that the potential text amendments that are suggested later in the meeting would not apply to this kind of a property because this is C2 and there's no potential changes to that?
Yeah, staff's current recommendation is that those changes do not apply to C2.
All right.
So rezoning would be required in that case.
And the last thing I had was that I don't know that there's much change to this, but my memory is that the Old Town Neighborhood Plan is on the older side and needs re-upped. Is that true, and is there any update on that?
Yeah, staff worked with the neighborhood to start an update to the Old Town Neighborhood Plan, and I'd say it's about halfway through that process. It's kind of been put on hold. It's kind of tentative. We're not sure when that will be rescheduled to get started again, but potentially in 2026, you could see more information about that.
Any other questions for staff? Yeah.
Parking, if this became 1 or 2 families, is there, it's obviously a very small lot.
There is parking in the rear of the site.
Okay, that's accessible from both the alley and 10?
It's accessible, his driveway, he has a driveway off the street and a driveway in the alley.
Okay.
Any other questions for staff? Seeing none, we'll move on to the applicant or some representative of the applicant. Seeing no one come forward, we will then move on to public testimony. If there are any members of the public who'd like to speak on this specific application, feel free to come forward and do that.
Good evening, everyone. Shamika King Sims, Historic Old Town Neighborhood Improvement Association. Our comments tonight are very brief. Unfortunately, we did not have the opportunity to attend the NIM because it was on the same night as our Citizen Advisory Council meeting, and that's a standing meeting, and we're active members, so we could not miss that meeting. And so I spoke with the owner of the building in advance, had a conversation over the phone, went and saw the site in person, in addition to just kind of doing a cursory look around when he was not available. And we feel that this is a appropriate use, given that he was able to save the building from the potential of being demolished for a parking lot, which we have plenty of in that, well, all over the neighborhood. So we are in agreement with this plan and look forward to seeing what comes of it. Thank you.
Are there any other members of the public who would like to speak on this item? Seeing none, I'm going to go ahead and close the public hearing and move on to discussion by commissioners. If there is none of that, then I'd be open to some sort of a motion.
I'll make the motion to approve.
I would second that.
All right. There's a motion to approve and a second for that motion. Any further discussion on that motion or this project? Seeing none, go ahead, Amanda.
Ms. Nelson?
Aye.
Ms. Pearson? Mr. Brooks?
Aye.
Ms. Herron?
Aye.
Mr. Nager?
Aye.
Mr. Mock?
Aye.
Ms. Hannon?
Aye.
Motion passes.
Next is discussion items. The first discussion item that we have is a presentation on the city's land bank.
Good evening, members of the Planning Commission. My name is Quinn Cole, Senior Management Analyst with Planning and Development, and today I'm going to be sharing with you a little about the Land Bank. Thank you. So in this presentation, I'm going to cover an introduction to the Land Bank, why we have it, then I'm going to talk about how the Land Bank works, then I'm going to give you a status update on where we're at currently, and then I'm going to tell you a little bit about how you can get involved as a member of the Planning Commission or a resident. So first of all, the Land Bank was adopted officially in May of 2023. It was a recommendation from the 2020 Housing Study. The purpose of the Land Bank is to serve the public purpose of providing for the orderly, planned, and reutilization of abandoned, tax foreclosed, or otherwise underutilized residential properties. At the beginning of the program, it was fully funded with $500,000, and the current fund balance is $498,630. And this is going to carry us for the rest of the year and a half in our pilot program. So how does the Land Bank work? First, the Land Bank acquires properties. There are four main ways in which the Land Bank can acquire property. The first is intergovernmental transfer, which is how all of the lots in the inventory currently have been acquired. They were all previously owned by the city of Topeka. The other ways include the tax sale, private donation, or private market activity, so we could make a market purchase. After these parcels are acquired, they're forgiven for all of their outstanding back due taxes and any code violations. And the Land Bank also funds and performs maintenance on the properties, the scope of which for our vacant lots includes cleaning up illegal dumping and mowing, and if there were a structure, it would include securing the property and potentially demolition. After this is done, the Land Bank is then able to sell the properties to responsible owners. The Land Bank is governed by a 5-member board of trustees that are appointed by the mayor. It includes 1 city council member, our planning and development director, a resident representing an NIA, and then 2 residents at large. All of their terms are ending this December, and we will be beginning anew in January 2026 with a brand new board of trustees. And this board of trustees approves all land transactions into and out of the Land Bank. Where are we at currently? The Land Bank launched to the public in June of 2024, so that puts us exactly at the halfway mark of our 3-year pilot period. And since we began, we've sold 2 lots, one of which is going to be closed on this week. All of these sales and any potential sales have development agreements that require designated timelines and project plans so that we can ensure compliance and timeliness of development. And currently, we have 8 vacant lots in our inventory, with 1 more in the process of being acquired. How to get involved? First of all, you can buy land or donate any land that you want to get off your hands. You can also come to all of our public meetings. We meet at least once monthly, and they are public, so you can make any public comment you wish. And then you can share this information about the land bank with any interested parties. That's, residents that might want somewhere to live, or developers who might want somewhere to build. And so you can contact us, landbank@topeka.org. And with that, myself and Deputy City Manager Braxton Copley will stand for any questions.
Any questions on the land bank? Commissioner Brooks?
Just a couple questions. Thanks for that great presentation. So could you explain the 3-year pilot program and what that is, what the goals of that, and then what, you're halfway through, and so in a year and a half, what happens then?
Yeah, so the purpose of the 3-year pilot program was to build the program to specifically fit how it can work in Topeka, to play it slow and try lots of different things and gauge whether or not it'll be a successful tool for the community. After our most recent Board of Trustees meeting, we had a feedback session where we got a lot of feedback from the outgoing board members. And so now at our halfway point, we're kind of recalibrating our strategy to explore different ways to acquire properties and different ways to market our properties in order to get more foot traffic and interest.
Okay. And then is this just residential properties, or is this also commercial properties?
It is currently just residential properties.
Okay. Cool. Thanks.
So I'll piggyback off of Quinn's comments. Deputy, or the mayor-elect Duncan is the one who has been the spearhead of this, and he absolutely wanted to do this on an incremental basis and wanted to have proof of concept before moving forward and making a recommendation for making it permanent, as well as what the face of it looks like. But for example, one of the changes that they made was initially it was only going to be home ownership, and now they've opened that up to allow for rental.
This is Commissioner Pearson. You've spent basically around $2,000. What was that for?
All of the money that was spent went to the maintenance of the 8 lots currently in our inventory, so the mowing and picking up of any trash dumping that was done there.
I'm just curious where the 8 vacant lots come from.
The 8 vacant lots were all previously owned by the city. They've been acquired for various reasons over the past several decades, and we were able to identify them with our real estate person, and we were able to identify the right ones that were primed for development and pick them out.
I guess I'm thinking about the tax list and how extensive and large it is, and to hear that there's only 8 properties after a year and a half. What is the criteria to get into the land bank?
The criteria to get into the land bank is to be a developable residential property. The biggest barrier we've run into is finding different ways to acquire properties. We've not yet engaged in any private market activities, so that's a whole new avenue to explore. We have not received any donations. We've had a little bit of interest around. And then tax sale is also an upcoming strategy to maximize how we can partner with the county to get the right lots into the land bank.
Let me just add a couple of items. First is that the city of Topeka was able to successfully bid on 3 parcels at the last auction, and we bid the amount of our specials to protect those specials, and so we purchased 3 lots out in Lawrence Bay. Those have been donated to the land bank. We did attempt at the last tax auction to purchase 11 parcels that the land bank members identified would be good fit. Typically, they were all vacant parcels because we didn't want to be the ones kicking someone out of their home. And unfortunately, we were not successful on any of those bids. We were outbid on all of those.
I mean, I guess I'm thinking with almost $500,000, you couldn't, what is your max? I know it's different for every house, but I guess that's this overarching question of what is the max you're willing to pay to get things into the land bank. But we're not going to go into that right now. I guess I'm also curious about what the criteria is to make it, to let it continue. I mean, in a year and a half, you're going to sit down and decide whether you're going to keep doing this or not. Do you have goals set at this point in time?
No, ma'am.
No?
No, ma'am.
When will you be doing that?
I'm happy to accept any suggestions that you would have in terms of goals and measurables and deliverables.
I mean, I guess it's hard to know if you're getting there if you don't have a goal in mind.
Yes, ma'am.
So, I mean, almost $500,000. And it's only been spent on maintenance at this point. Those are my questions for now. Thank you.
I have a question. Have you guys reached out to any of the cities that has had a successful land bank program that's really utilized it, like the city of Pittsburgh, for instance?
Yes, we have. Deanna Goring over there, she was a huge help in setting up all of the administrative procedures and documents for our land bank, and even did a consulting meeting with our Board of Trustees early on in the process.
Commissioner Herron.
I guess I don't have to raise my hand. I just have to speak. My question was around donating land. If someone were to donate land, are there any, do they get any, like if they owe back taxes, do they get that waived? Is there any incentive to acquire donated land?
Yes, when a property enters the land bank inventory, it is wiped clean of all back due taxes and code violations on the property.
Okay.
I had a question related to that. That is just, it's not for all back taxes and code violations for the owner. It's the violations and back taxes tied to that plot of land. Is that correct?
Yes.
All right. And then I was also going to ask about kind of building on Commissioner Pearson's comments. If in a year and a half, there's going to be some thought process and decision made on whether or not to continue it. Is that a decision, a policy decision by the governing body that determines that matter?
Yes.
And so there would be some sort of a vote by the city council as a whole at that point?
Yes.
My recollection is that Councilmember Duncan sunset this ordinance after 3 years, and so the governing body would have to make the decision to carry it forward and to move the land bank forward.
And so, yeah, I do agree that some specific measurable goals would be ideal, but that would be setting up for a process where those elected officials could weigh whatever factors they found persuasive.
That is correct. And one thing I want you to keep in mind is, while it is admirable to have a goal of getting a lot of property into the land bank, the purpose of the land bank is to increase the amount of affordable housing that we have. So there are land banks that literally have hundreds of lots that are sitting there, and the city is having to take care of those, right? In terms of the maintenance, cleanup, all of that. The key is to try to brainstorm to think of ways to engage the smaller developers to want to step up, want this opportunity to get the land at a pittance of a cost if they will put affordable housing on that. And one of the parcels that we conveyed, the developer had great ideas in terms of having something in the 220 range, came back to us months later and said, I can't make this pencil out. Even with you guys selling me the lot at $100, I cannot make this pencil out because construction costs are about $190 a square foot. And if I'm trying to put together an 800,000 square foot house with a couple of bedrooms and a bathroom, I'm not even affordable, right? And so we need to balance both of these, right? It's a matter of, yes, we would like to have more parcels. We thought we were going to be successful at the auction, didn't get any of those. But we need to have the end game in sight, which is it's not a prudent expenditure of city money to have 100 parcels that we're having to mow and clean up if we can't, on the back end, engage those to get them moving. Now, we do have another program, which is the Affordable Housing Trust Fund, that there'll be a presentation tomorrow night at the city council meeting, which hopefully will provide some gap financing to allow for a developer to get, say, 20% of the development cost. To be able to do it, we're going to incentivize, if they can utilize a property in the land bank, we'll incentivize that as well. So trying to do all of these in concert. And then another idea that we've been kicking around is, as part of our neighborhood plans, and we're going to try to do 2 a year, is engage the neighborhood. Can they identify parcels that they know, right? They live there. Is there a parcel that they know, a resident that they know that is struggling with the taxes? And maybe there's an opportunity for them to get out from under that burden and do a donation, right? So to try to get that word out and to do it on the grassroots level.
So a potential developer on the same project could use both the Affordable Housing Trust Fund and the Land Bank?
Correct.
All right. And then, oh, it sounds like for the most part, this is like maybe a vacant lot of land. If someone were to donate a plot of land that had a structure on it, like, is that something that would fit this, or would be directed elsewhere, or just not accepted because it didn't fit what this is structured to do?
So that's a great question, and the starting point is going to be, what's the condition of the structure, right? Is the structure in such a state that it's going to cost $30,000 to do a demolition, right? Or is it something that potentially we put into the land bank because structurally it's sound, but it needs a rehab? Maybe we put it in the land bank and look for a developer to come in to flip it, and then maybe there's an opportunity for some gap financing, right, through the Affordable Housing Trust Fund to help with that rehab and keep it affordable.
Commissioner Brooks?
Just to kind of make a comment and a point, yeah, the cost of construction is crazy. It doesn't relate to what rents are going for. It just, so to hear that it couldn't pencil makes sense. It's not surprising. And just to maybe ask, I know the conversation about allowing duplexes and tris and quads and all that in R1 still needs to go through city council, but I'm curious if you've talked to developers, have they tried to run numbers on putting a duplex in that same plot of land and how that pencils, or I assume that would help them in that scenario, but have you gotten any feedback on that front?
Not in passing, yes, but
Okay.
not formally through the land bank in terms of, I think I can make a duplex work on this particular lot.
Yep, and maybe the point that I want to make is, I think this is great, and every little piece of the puzzle has to work in order for it to pencil, and I think this is great. The duplex, allowing duplexes in R1 is important in order to stimulate something, because at this point, nothing's happening, so just want to make those points.
I do have another question. I know the 8 lots that you're referring to, is there any thoughts on how to get the access to those lots? Like if a developer wants to come in and build on those 8, is there any sort of, I guess, incentive or pre-planning on how the road and everything is to be built?
Well, the 8 that we currently have are all disparate sites. They're scattered throughout the city of Topeka. There's a 3D Homes, which is an RHID that's going to be on tomorrow night, that is identifying 8 lots at Colley Creek. Is that the ones that you're talking about?
No, when I looked up online at the inventory inside the land bank, it was an abandoned subdivision over by Biddle Creek. And there was half a block in there of all the houses, rural lots.
The only lots I'm aware of that are in the same subdivision are the 3 Lawrence Bay lots down in Southwest. The rest are all scattered infill sites.
This was 2 or 3 months ago when I was looking at stuff on the land bank.
Yeah, the large parcel that has multiple lots within it, that is the parcel that is scheduled to be closed on this week.
Sorry for the confusion
Oh,
on that.
yeah.
Try- Just one or two things I'm trying to juggle.
I'm sure. Yeah.
I just had one thing for thought, just from serving on boards. One of the things that I have witnessed is that when you have something that you start and then all those board members leave at once, and then you have another set of board members, you're kind of starting over every year. And it's really hard to gain momentum, especially when you're initiating something that's major. So just maybe one of the things to consider is maybe staggering some of the board members so that you have some rotating knowledge, just because I do think this could be a great avenue for the city, but I could see it getting very lost in transition because every year for the next 3 years, you're going to be starting over, and I think it's just going to be hard to get traction. And so that's one of my comments. I really would like for this to be successful, and I think with the Affordable Housing Trust Fund, that could be a great tool. I don't know if you're going to be using a point system for the Affordable Housing Trust Fund. Maybe if there's additional points for people that choose to get a property out of the land bank to incentivize it. What do you all think are there any other barriers outside of just construction costs? Do you think that's prohibiting those properties from moving?
So I'll start by saying great minds think alike.
Oh.
You must have been in the room when we were talking about improvements to the land bank to include expanding it in the number as well as to stagger the terms.
Okay.
Because right now, there's one person who's going to be a carryover, and that's me. Right? So yeah, we absolutely want to capture and keep that institutional knowledge. And the barriers are many, right? I mean, obviously, trying to attract someone who's altruistic enough to be able to do it, right? But still be able to make a profit and be able to make a living, right? The Affordable Housing Trust Fund, we are capping that at no more than 20% of a project cost. So it's truly intended to be gap financing. Land Bank is a great opportunity to get a parcel at low or no cost, but we're going to want a development agreement. We want to know what the plan looks like so that we can ensure that it is going to be affordable at the end of the day. And we'll want to restrict that for some period of time.
And how you all are defining affordability?
That is going to be largely what they think the cost of the house will pencil out at. And we're trying to keep it in the workforce housing. So think of it as 80 to 120% of AMI. So if it's going to be two-bedroom house, then we're going to want that in the low 200s to be able to make that achievable. Now, when you have other projects, like if you can leverage some LIHTC, some low-income housing tax credits, like Union at Tower, right, where we literally had LIHTC, RHID in terms of coming up with county-granted sales tax exemption. I mean, there are a lot of tools that are out there. What we really are struggling with is these disparate sites, infill housing. How do we incentivize that to be able to increase the amount of affordable and workforce housing that we have?
Okay. Thank you, guys.
Any other questions or comments on this one?
I just want to say out loud, you do have goals and objectives. I heard you say them. So just say that out loud. I want to clarify that. I do hear them, but perhaps you need to formalize them this next go around.
All right. Thank you very much. Sorry.
When do you all meet?
We meet monthly. Our previous board met on the last Tuesday of every month. However, when we have our first meeting in January, we're going to retake a look at what the best time and date are, but it will probably stay near the end of the month.
Okay.
I think that's everything. Thank you. Next is discussion on Planning Commission bylaws.
Commissioners, Dan Warner. I'm going to go through this change. Just a reminder that bylaws, any changes to bylaws have to be before the commission at least twice. And so this is the first time, it's just a discussion item at this point. The idea would be to come back next month with an action item. And the change specifically relates to agenda items on your agendas that aren't public hearings. So a public hearing is not, none of these changes we're talking about today applies to public hearings. Those are different. We don't require people to sign up for public hearings. They show up, they say their piece, similar to the case we just had. What this applies to is either discussion items or some other maybe non-action item that's on the agenda. And to be more consistent with what the governing body does, we are suggesting that people that want to provide comment on those discussion items, those non-action items, need to sign up with the Planning Commission before 3 o'clock on the date of the meeting. So again, kind of lining our process up more with the governing body. When we were doing the duplex item, we were getting some people that were specifically emailing and asking to sign up for those items. So I think they had in their head a process that they know about with the governing body. So we're just, again, trying to be a little more consistent with the governing body. So that's the change. It's just in Article 5 under BE public comment, Section 3B public comment, other agenda items. So with that, be happy to try to answer any questions.
So that is different than does general public comment, item C, go with item H on our agenda? Is that correct?
That is correct. That is a different thing that was added to the bylaws last time we made some changes. So that is if somebody wants to make comment on something not on the agenda, they can sign up ahead of time with the planning department and come talk about what they want to talk about. But that's specifically for things not on the agenda.
Okay. The reason why I ask is because item H has a 2 o'clock time period, right. Item B has a 3 o'clock time period, and item D1 has a 5 o'clock time period. Wouldn't you rather get them all consistent?
Absolutely, Commissioner.
Okay.
We will do that. That's a fair point.
Okay. So will it be probably 3 o'clock then?
I would think 3 o'clock would suffice, yes.
Okay.
How many days before our meetings is the agenda up on Topeka Speaks?
It's at least 10 days, so we'll post on the almost always on the Friday, 10 days out, basically.
That I think is a good amount of time. I know other levels of government sometimes post like the morning of a morning meeting.
Yeah.
And so I am glad that the city of Topeka is not following that lead.
Right. I will also make the point that we will make sure on the agenda that like we do for general public comment, we will put on there that you have to sign up. We'll do the same thing for these other items that aren't public hearings. We'll just make sure that it's clear on the agenda that you have to sign up.
Anything else? Then we will move on to our third discussion item, which is text amendments. I will turn that over to staff.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So this is a early draft of a proposal for a text amendment to provide a little more flexibility to allow multifamily residential use development in the C commercial districts, D1 downtown district, and X1 mixed-use zoning districts. So what you're being asked to do tonight is consider this and initiate this amendment, and then we'll continue to work on it. We anticipate bringing this back to you and to hold a public hearing at the January meeting. In the meantime, the standing committee, if they choose to, they could meet and we could review it with them as well, and they can get their feedback or their input. Current zoning regulations allow dwelling units, apartments usually, above the ground floor or in a basement in all C commercial districts. D downtown districts, and X mixed-use zoning districts with few restrictions. Dwellings on the main floor, however, are limited and must meet the special use requirements in section 18.225.010 of the zoning code in all of these districts, with the exception of D2 and D3, in which they are allowed without being subject to those special standards. So this slide shows you a piece of the land use table in the code, and what's suggested at this time is that in the C3 for two-family dwellings, it be changed to a C, a conditional use. Currently, it's not permitted. For 3, 4 family dwellings and multifamily dwellings, changed to allowed without a C, without an S, excuse me. The S in the code refers to the special use standard. So what that means is it's permitted by right with a building permit as long as it meets the special use standards. So what's being proposed is it would change that to be allowed without an S in C3 and C4 districts, not C2 district, for example. For dwelling units on the main floor, there would be no change in O&I, C1 and C2. O&I is office and institutional uses, office and institutional zoning district. C1 is neighborhood commercial district. There's not much C1 zoning in the city. It's kind of an unusual situation where you'd see a C1, but C1 is very limited neighborhood commercial. C2 is not called neighborhood commercial, but it's kind of functions like neighborhood commercial, or it's not as much C2 zoning. The uses are limited, more limited in C2 than they are in C4. Also is recommended is no change to D1 and X3 with dwellings on the ground floor. So in other words, they would continue to be permitted but subject to special use requirements. And change to allowed without being subject to special use requirements in C3, C4, and X1. X2, kind of a question mark about that. So something we need to, did you want to? Bear change. Yeah, they still have an S in the table. That's right. They'll still have an S in the table, sorry. Yeah, that's kind of confusing. And I'm going to show you that in a second here. So this is why that might be confusing. So the text, this is right out of the zoning code, 18.225.010, dwelling units on the main floor. So paragraphs 1 and 2, those are what's currently in the code. The paragraphs 3 and 4, the underlined is what's being recommended at this time. So for land classified D1 or X1, the standards in this section for dwellings on main floor apply exclusively to lands and buildings abutting Kansas Avenue between 6th Avenue and 10th Avenue and between Gordon Street and Norris Street. And if someone wants to develop in this way and they cannot meet these standards, they can still apply for a conditional use permit. At least that's what's proposed. So I have some maps here of some C4 zoning, and this does not include all of the C4 zoning. This includes the predominant clusters of C4 zoning, C3 and C4 zoning in Topeka. So this represents some opportunity potentially for some multifamily residential development. We occasionally get proposals for that. There was a rezone that you recommended approval of, and ultimately it was approved. And that's now, looks like it's going to turn into a project on Arvonia. That was zone C4. And you recommended approval. There was no opposition to that, and it was approved. So there are some parcels that are shown outlined in kind of a lime green color. Those are vacant, and it's hard to see, but there are also some parcels that are identified as ag because they're essentially vacant, but they're being farmed. They're outlined in purple. So this is in North Topeka at Topeka Boulevard and US 24, that area. So here's some more existing C4 zoning. The map on the left, you can see downtown Topeka, and then the corridors that stretch out beyond downtown. A lot of that is zone C3, C4. And then on the right, it's just south of that. The corridor you see on the left is Topeka Boulevard, 29th Street and south of that. And then there's a cluster out at 29th, and California. And this is the Wanamaker corridor on the, we can see on the map on the left, it's that Wanamaker north of 21st, and then, and west of Gage. And then on the right, that's Wanamaker and that includes areas north of 21st, but also south of 21st. So there's some overlap in that map. These are really just to demonstrate to you, because I don't expect that the Planning Commission looks at a zoning map every day and knows where all the different zoning districts are, but just to show you how widespread C4 zoning is. Okay, so this is D1 zoning. Much of the downtown area is zone D1, some of it's zone D2, some of it's zone D3, but not very much. A lot of it's D1. So what's being recommended is that, except for that segment, that 2-block segment between, it's not 2 blocks, it's 4 blocks, between 6th and 10th, it would just be allowed. You do residential development on the ground floor. So we are getting some proposals. We're considering proposals right now, and so this amendment is very important to support those proposed developments. So this is X1 zoning. You're probably not all that familiar with X1 zoning, but there's where we have adopted neighborhood plans. One way to implement those plans was to adopt new zoning and to rezone property. And the one in the upper left is Southeast 6th, so it's 6th, basically east of Branner. And then the one in the upper right is Oakland, it's Seward Avenue in Oakland. And the one on the bottom right is Southwest 6th, so it's 6th west of Polk, that area. And then there's X1 and X2 zoning in North Topeka, quite a lot of it. And the one on the left is kind of to the north of North Topeka, and the one on the right is kind of gets into the Noto area, the south end of Topeka Boulevard, and areas to the east and west. It's kind of a mix of X1, and X2 zoning, and some X3. Okay, so this is the X3 zoning. So this is Noto. And what would be recommended here is that there be no real restriction necessarily for residential uses on the ground floor, except in that corridor in the heart of Noto, where the buildings are really retail buildings. And as in the core of downtown along Kansas Avenue, to have to have those buildings convert to residential on the ground floor is really detracts from the energy and the critical mass of retail, restaurants, entertainment that you want on those corridors. And it might not be a good fit for those buildings anyway on the ground floor. Again, there are some exceptions. So one of the exceptions that already applies is if someone wants to convert a building that was used as a school or a residential structure before, and that's been permitted. And that's the end of my presentation, and be happy to answer any questions you have.
Commissioner Pearson?
I do have a question. I think I understand why you're doing it. I don't quite understand what prompted this text amendment at this point in time.
So a couple things. The committee's been meeting and looking at things that they have control over. One thing that the committee has control over and the Planning Commission has control over to support more housing development are the zoning regulations. So if there are regulations in the code that are obstacles to residential development, affordable housing, or housing goals that we're trying to meet, then those are fair game for amending. Second thing with downtown, we have heard of some proposals for development that the current code would be an obstacle to that. So that's why this is fairly important, and the timing of it is fairly important too. I'll give you an example of C4. So C4, I mentioned the earlier rezoning. I had a conversation with somebody, we've had a couple conversations with these folks, that they want to develop some land at C4. It's a great site for housing. They want to do a LIHTC project. Right now, under current standards, it would require rezoning. So that adds some uncertainty to the process, to the outcome, and just a lot of time and energy to that decision. So this code would make it so that would be just allowed. It'd still go through a review process, they have to do a subdivision plat and site plan review and all of that, but certainly take that rezoning decision out of it.
So my second question is, would it be more efficient just to get the land use management plan redone and incorporate these changes in there, or no?
No, the land use and growth management plan is our comprehensive plan.
Right.
And so changing the policies there does not directly change the zoning regulations.
I guess it's just a strategy in writing. I'm big on goals today, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, this is consistent with those goals.
Yeah.
I think one of the things the way in which it is consistent with the land use and growth management plan is that it promotes housing development and it promotes development in the city, in infill areas. And this certainly would help support that.
Sure, I understand. I guess getting it in the plan would be nice, but thank you.
Yeah.
For those zones in downtown and Nodo, am I correct in thinking it's just the bits that actually really align with those streets? So like, I think about like the Jayhawk Tower, which is on that same city block, but it is closer to Jackson. It's on the Jackson side of the alleyway. That would not be, or other similar.
So currently, it's not allowed on ground floor, except under certain circumstances. And what's recommended is that, like the Jayhawk Tower fronts on Jackson, so it would change, so dwellings would be allowed on the ground floor under this recommendation.
I don't expect that to happen with Jayhawk Tower. I mentioned that as an example because I feel secure about where that is in compared to this map.
Yeah, yes, correct. So I don't think I can pinpoint here, but
It's the alley between
yeah, the
Jackson
boundary
and
is the
Kansas.
alley between those blocks, between those streets.
And that's also true, the alley is the boundary in Nodo as well.
Correct.
Okay.
Yes.
Commissioner Brooks?
Yep. Couple questions. I'm just looking at the D1 zoning map. I know we don't have a crystal ball, but, what if it changes? Does making this change affect the decision to grow the D1 zoning in the future, or does that make sense?
Well, I think I can answer that. So the D1 zoning, where it is now, is based on the downtown master plan that was updated a few years ago. And when that was updated, the planning commission recommended and the governing body approved zoning to implement that plan. So the D1 zoning is pretty much where it's going to be unless there's a major policy change or a different look at downtown.
Yeah, and I'm thinking long-term, like 20 years or something. The other question I had is, I'm just trying to think through potential unintended consequences, or, what are the potential, because I really like this. I think it opens up a whole lot of square footage of space that could be easily remodeled into apartments, and it could really help. But on the flip side, what are the cons? And so could you kind of help share any negatives or cons that you've thought through along the way?
As far as the D1 zoning, I really do not see any downside to this at all. I can't think of any downside to it. I think C4, I see some potential. I think it's unlikely, but you have old commercial centers that have multiple ownerships within the same building, and suddenly someone wants to convert a retail space into some apartments, and the retail space next to it might feel like that's incompatible. Now, it's only really an issue if you have multiple ownerships, if it's not under the same ownership. I mean, I shouldn't say it's only an issue then, but you know, we had a situation where, I don't want to get into too much of the weeds here, but we had someone in North Topeka that converted the back end of a property that's zoned C4, and it was an office building, and the code currently allows that because it's the back of the property. It's secondary to the predominant use of the ground floor, and that was incompatible in their mind because they had an insurance office in the back, and now you had these other units converting to apartments. And the reason why it was really a situation is because that building was condominiumized, so each of those units are under separate ownership, which is an unusual situation, I think, in Topeka. And they could be outvoted, and you know, they just that's an example. I don't think those are very likely to happen, especially C4. I just don't think it's a huge issue, but it could be.
Speaking directly of downtown in historic preservation, I'm not sure how compatible having a residential unit would be on the first floor. Because historically, it hasn't really happened. In the back of the building, in the upper floors, but.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. I think if someone's converting the the ground floor space to residential, for example, let's say it has a storefront window system. If they're converting to residential, maybe that's not compatible with residential. They want to go with a different type of window system. That's going to affect the physical nature of that building. So this issue has come up before about historic districts, and the Landmarks Commission still has control over the physical manifestation of that land use. So if there's a physical thing about it that's incompatible, we still have that control through as a certified local government review.
That's the only thing I can think of in terms of downtown anyway, the rest of it, but historic preservation.
So this would apply to, or would potentially change things in C3 and C4, but not C1 and C2?
Yes.
I'm just curious what the thinking was on where to draw the line.
I think it's a couple things. So, first of all, the change to C1 and C2 would not have much of an impact because there's not that much of it. I don't know how much C2 is vacant. We haven't really done that analysis. There's probably not much. There's just not much C2 and C1 and C2. C1, where you'll find C1 is in the middle of a residential neighborhood on a small piece of property. I can think of maybe one or two, and it's just, I guess it could have more of a negative impact. We've just gone through this conversation about duplexes, triplexes, and quads, and the Planning Commission landed on recommending that as a conditional use. So, I guess those are the main concerns, right? Is that what you think?
Yeah, the C2 in particular is also a little more neighborhood oriented, so probably just a slightly more of an impact than you would have in a C4, I guess, just the intensity and whatnot. The properties aren't as big either. That's probably some of the consideration. C4 properties can be quite large, and C2 isn't really like that.
There are questions, comments, discussion? All right. Then there's also home occupation regulations.
They could do it with the home occ. So there's nothing to share on home occ. The point of tonight was to ask you to initiate a text amendment, basically. So we'll bring back something at your next meeting along with the text amendments that Mike talked about. So if you could make a motion to initiate all of those, so 8, what is it, B and C? If you could just do that before we move on, and just vote on that. That way we can just get rolling and work on them. And we'll bring something back next month.
Would that be directing the staff or directing the standing committee or?
Staff. Staff, yeah.
And then, is there any issue with it currently being a discussion item, like taking a vote?
No, I think it's appropriate for you guys to direct staff to initiate that.
All right. Then, any questions, discussion, or motions on both 3A and 3B?
I'd like to move to direct staff to develop text amendments on 3A and 3B.
I second that.
Any discussion on the motion? Go ahead.
Ms. Hannon?
Aye.
Mr. Mock?
Aye.
Mr. Nager?
Aye.
Ms. Herron?
Aye.
Mr. Brooks?
Aye.
Ms. Pearson?
Aye.
Ms. Nelson?
Aye.
Motion to initiate passes.
Next is the report from the Standing Committee on Housing, if there is any report.
I will just say, we emailed out earlier today the report, and I'll just emphasize again, oh no, what was it, Ryan, what was the guy's name from?
Ryan Vincent.
Ryan Vincent, thank you. From KHRC presented their programs at the meeting, and it was informative. It was a good meeting. I thought good information about how that all works on the state side.
Did it say something in the email about inviting them to this meeting, or am I making that up?
I don't believe it said that.
Oh, okay, I'm making it up. Never mind.
All right. Anything else on the report from the Standing Committee? Move on to communications to the commission.
Just happy holidays.
We anticipate having a January meeting?
Absolutely.
Yeah, okay.
It won't be till the end of the month, so it's like January 26th. So it's going to be quite a while before you meet again.
Okay. And then general public comment, anyone for that? All right. Then with that, I believe that is everything, so we will adjourn.